invite all of you to stop by our booth today or tomorrow and sign up for our free weekly e-newsletter called Intel. It's all about dairy happenings and issues around the world. Today's topic theme is heifer creation, health, and development. And now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our first speaker, Andrew Hunt, whose topic on selective mating is appropriately called Like Me or Leave Me. Andrew grew up on a dairy farm in Ontario, and his passion for dairy cows grew as a 4-H member where he learned to fit, show, and market cattle. He started his own agricultural marketing company while still in university, specializing in genetics. Through elite breeders, he marketed the #1 LPI bull in the world, as well as many grand champions and high-indexing females. Most recently, he launched thebulvine.com. Reaching more than 10,000 people, it is now the largest digital dairy publication in the world and gives daily insight into breeding issues, as well as hosting lively debate about the people, products, and services which are revolutionizing our industry. That's thebulvine.com. Often seen in the show ring at maybe major dairy shows, taking photographs or bidding on cattle as part of his family's 4-generation farm, Huntsdale Holsteins. Please welcome Mr. Andrew Hunt.
Thanks, Andy. Much appreciated. I want to thank everyone for coming out. Nasty driving today, and certainly I know that a lot of people are running late, but we want to keep on schedule, so we'll just keep rolling through. I want to say thank you to the Dairy Expo team for asking me to speak and giving me an interesting title like Me or Leave Me kind of fits with our brand at the Bovine. But today I want to talk about durable cows and what it takes to produce durable cows that will be long-lasting and profitable for your herd. You know, they mentioned in the bio there that I spend a lot of time taking pictures in the show ring. I'm a big fan of show cattle, but for about 99.9% of the breeders in this world and milk producers in the world, show cattle don't pay the bills. It's a great passion, it's a great hobby. A select few are able to make and pay the bills with it, but for the large majority, it's more through passion than actual revenue. In seed stock genetics in the last year, the seed stock prices, when we analyzed the big 3 big sales from around the world time this year compared to last year, the prices have dropped 50% in 1 year alone. Some say that the genomic bubble has burst. Some say it's right sizing. There's a lot of things we can get into a discussion about that. But today, the big point is selling seed stock also is not quite the revenue that it once had. My wife does not come from a dairy farm, so when we look at the revenues, she kind of tells me that if I buy one more show animal or one more cow, it's one of us going to have to go. I will miss her on show days. I do love going in the show ring, so my wife kind of knows how that sits. But in reality, for the most of us, what pays the bills? And what pays the bills for most people is a cow that lasts a long time, 2, 3, 4, 5 lactations plus, and is very productive during that time. That is what is most profitable for 99.9% of the breeders. So what does that cow look like? What is she made up? What are her parts? What are her pieces? We did a project about a year back, just over a year back, where we took all the highest classification cows in the world, and we took the highest cow for feet and legs, highest cow for udders, and made this cow here. She is not a real cow. She is a composite of about 7 different cows. But she is what the ideal cow would look like if she ever were to exist. But unfortunately, she does not. But the question is, what style of cow really is the lifetime producing cow? And we wanted to make it applicable to younger cows, so we took an endeavor to do it to 2-year-olds. And the first cow we came up with was kind of like the ideal 2-type cow. This is, again, a composite of about 5 different cows, really open rib, great udder, long dairy cow, You know, if she was classified, she'd be 89 points, really an ideal cow. But, you know, for a lot of people, there's other styles of cows they like. The second cow we're going to look at today is a cow that has a lot of capacity. A cow that's very strong, very solid, can stand the test of time, is the comments that people make. And then the third cow, she's not quite like the other two. She a little shallower in the chest, maybe not as tall, a lot shorter in that front end, and maybe not as capacious up through her ribs as some of the other animals. So I ask you to take a moment and just kind of think about when you're thinking about what's your ideal cow, and just kind of think in your head and think to yourself just which one of these two. Is it number 1, number 2, or number 3? Give you a moment to kind of think about that. You know, for a lot of the guys, that analogy, it's kind of like saying, I would like to marry a supermodel who's really smart and is great with children. You know, it's all that we'd love to have, but can you get the complete package? Not always possible. So when you have to choose between, when you look at this cow, it's very close to the true type model 2-year-old that's in the U.S. comps that they've done. That's what a lot of the pedigree seed stock breeders strive for. And they want that 89 scoring 2-year-old. But as the stats will show, over the period of 2007 to 2010, there were 20 very good 89 2-year-olds classified. Even 6 of them made it into third lactation. So 30% of them even made it to third lactation. If you compare that to breed averages, which is the yellow highlighted line here, you'll see that on average about 30% make it into fourth lactation amongst the breed. So when 30% of them don't even make it third to second into third lactation, that's less than 18% less than the breed average. So the 89 scoring 2-year-olds maybe aren't the most lifetime, long-time producing as far as the numbers dictate. I talk to a lot of breeders, and even by growing up, and when we did a lot with high-index cows, and a lot of cows that way, and high-producing cows, we typically looked at a cow a little more like this. A cow that's really sound in the rudder, maybe not as high and wide as the rear udder of the show cow, certainly a lot thicker through that front end. Not as peeled off for the show ring, got that dairy strength that you're looking for, and really what I would say a lot of breeders are looking for. So I ask you the question of, is a well-sprung open bred with adequate width and capacity for consumption, a high forage diet, required for lifetime production? That verbiage I put there is the Holstein Canada definition for dairy strength. And as a side note that I'll highlight here, and a lot of the presentation here, I spent 18 years running the roads, the back doors of Holstein Canada. My father ran the type classification program and the genetic improvement program for 18 years at Holstein Canada. So for me to even question the definition of what is a dairy strength cow and type classification was a really interesting procedure for me. You know, I wondered if I'd be allowed to hold it again. So I looked at that cow and I said, well, let's look through the numbers here. And the numbers tell us that that cow does not last as long. The numbers show us that if you look at the top 25 proven sires for direct herd life, which is measured by how long, many months a cow is actually producing in the herd, so not an index or a composite, this is real lifetime data, those top 25 average just under 500 kilograms of milk, so not a lot of milk, and strictly a breed average for herd life for those animals in the dairy strength. So dairy strength does not dictate lifetime production, which for me was almost earth-shattering when I first realized that. And then I went a little deeper, and there's a gentleman that I got to know very well at the Canadian Dairy Network named Ryan Van Bermel, very intelligent man, very smart man, who loves just crunching numbers. He loves giving you every which stat he can. But one of the published papers he put out was about the direct herd life and the negative correlation between body depth and lifetime production in the herd, actually showing that the deeper bodied cows very much do not last. Of interesting note, and we'll discuss this a little further, cows with low somatic cell and high health traits and high fertility have a high correlation. We'll talk about that in a minute. But going back to what our ideal cow looks like, it brings me to our third cow. And our third cow, as I said, not as deep in the rib, a little shallower, like you see those dairy strengths cows, just not that capacity as a 2-year-old. And in reality, those are the cows that give you the longest lifetime production. If you look at the top 25, it shows you, and this is in the US data, that they're less than a half a point, which converted over to Canada is about a 2 or 3 for confirmation. And they're just under half a point for body composite, so again, they're about a 2 or 3 for their equal strength. So it brings me to look at, okay, who are the greatest lifetime producers of the breed? I think a lot of people might know this cow. This is a very famous worldwide cow. It's Gillette E. Smurf. Anyone know why she's famous? Anyone heard of her? If you've heard of Smurf, raise your hand. Yeah. Smurf set the world record for production in a lifetime. So if there's an epitome of a cow that lasts, it's Smurf. She made, and this was at the time of the certificate, she's done more than that now, she made over 216, she's actually over 220,000 kilos of milk in her lifetime. But the interesting thing about Smurf, the interesting thing about Smurf is she did not go excellent until her 7th lactation. But let's think about what she looked like as a 2-year-old. As a 2-year-old, she scored good plus 84. Holding her back and going very good was 2 traits that typically we associate with lifetime production. It was a good plus 80 on her feet and legs, and a good plus 82 on her dairy strength. Her 2 weakest traits, and yet she went on to be the greatest lifetime producing cow. We did an article on our site saying she ain't pretty, she was built that way. Got a lot of interesting discussion going because maybe the cow that looks the prettiest isn't always the highest milking. So when you look at, okay, what is the highest milking? What am I breeding for if I'm not breeding for that 89.2-year-old? What 3 traits do you look for? So I ask you, when you go to make your mating selections or your sire selections, what are the first 3 things you look at? When I talk with a lot of breeders, a lot of things they say obviously is milk production, their conformation, a lot of the things along those lines. But I ask you, how often do you actually select your mating sires based on the typical reasons you call cattle from your herd? When we did that question, we took the data over a larger subset. This is the actual cull rates reported by DHI for reasons why cows are culled within the herd. Highest one by far, infertility and reproduction. Second, which is a great reason for reasons in the herd, sold for dairy purposes. Third, mastitis. Fourth, injury. Fifth, feet and legs. And then a lot of other ones highlighted in little bits. But if you look, low production is not until 6th. The confirmation is actually dead last at less than 1%. So, you really need, and we need to think about, how important is fertility? Your biggest expense in your genetic programs is your semen costs, unless you're doing a lot of IVF work. And so fertility really is your greatest expense, both from a buying of semen, but also getting a cow back into the milking herd. So when you look at it, I really ask that you go a little deeper, that fertility goes to the top of your list. A lot of breeders already do put a lot of weight on udder health, udder composites, and mastitis, which certainly should be number 2 on your list for genetic reasons. And then the number 3 one that's a genetic purpose for cull rates, feet and legs. Now, feet and legs is a little bit of an interesting variable one because when you look at feet and legs, you look at the heritability of feet and legs, it's actually very low. The heritability of feet and legs, breeding for feet and legs, and say, I want to use a high feet and leg bull all the time. You'd be much better off to do a better hoof trimming, hoof care program to address that problem than you typically would through genetics. But the bottom line, I always like to say, we don't want to just raise problems or give issues. We want to look at solutions. And so one of the things I looked at, and a lot of breeders talk about when we talk about who are the top bulls and what bulls should you be using. A lot of bulls either reference here in Canada the Lifetime Profit Index, or in the U.S., and a lot of people around the world like to use the trademark by hosting USA Total Profit Index. A quick look at those two shows you that in Canada, we actually put a lot more emphasis on production and durability, which is the type composite version of durability. In the U.S., they put a little more emphasis on the production and their health and fertility, so a little more on that, but certainly not as much as maybe we should as we go through here, because if you were to take, let's say, I want to produce a cow that will last 3 lactations and give me the most amount of milk over that 3 periods, you have to say, okay, well, why would she leave? And let's weight it accordingly. So when we took the genetic reasons for infertility, mastitis, feet and legs, and weighted the indexes accordingly, we put production as 50%, and then said, where the other cull reasons apply, we see that health and fertility is 39% of the reason, weighting and durability is 11. Very, very different. It's actually almost an exact inverse relationship to the current Canadian LPI formula that shows that instead of putting so much weighting on durability, we need to put that same weighting on health and fertility. And of course, you need a cow that produces a lot, so you still need the production values. One of my favorite tools to play with, I am a fan, as I mentioned, with Brian Durrell and CDN, is their little custom index tool. I use it a lot. It lets you kind of weight the indexes the way you would like. So when we plug those weightings into look at proven sires, it's kind of an interesting group that comes to the top of the list. Right at the top are about 5 or 6 bulls, 7 bulls that I know are in the top 10 sales in the U.S. In their gen kind. Man, Oman, Alta Esquire, Freddie, Barrett, Manifold, Iota, and Jet Air was actually pretty popular too. So it's not surprising where they are very much production focused. These bulls that are very much lifetime production bulls, and very much sires and sons for that, get heavy use. For those of you that are genomic fans, I am a genomic fan, we'll talk about that in a few moments. We can plug it in and say which bulls are the top genomic bulls for that. So we have them here. I will make the slides available later on that. What's interesting to note is when you look at the averages for these bulls, and it's still only a 50% production weight and 50% cull rates, when you look at the herd life values, you see that on average, those bulls, those top groups, average 10% higher for lifetime production. And that's in over a 100 cow herd. If you had 100 2-year-olds, over the lifetime of those 2-year-olds, that's 30 extra lactations that you will get just by making sure you pay attention to the herd life. So how do you pay attention? How do you go about this? So we kind of have our 3 steps to better breeding that we go through. And we discussed, sometimes it's really hard to spend a lot of time picking your mating sires and picking what you're doing. So I kind of do a very basic one to start, pretty simple. I want all the bulls that are over 1,200 kilos of milk, 12,500 or 12,050 kilos or pounds of milk, sorry, that's the U.S. one, and 5 for productive life. What's interesting is when I pull up those proven bulls, I get a lot of those same bulls that we're buying in Canada, but I also get a lot of the sires of sons, or the maternal bred sires of sons with the genetic age nowadays. You got Bookham, you got Freddie, you got Robust, you got Shamrock, you got Observer, and you have a bunch of Planet and Planet itself all in the top 10. So it's not surprising that you just even take it to that basic level, you get a lot of the sires of sons, the top bulls. Again, I pull up the genomic list. We will share the list afterwards. I had the opportunity in running the bovine and talking with about anywhere from 50 to 60 different breeders a day to meet a lot of breeders from around the world. In doing so, I met a gentleman named Don Bennett. And Don Bennett runs in North Florida Holsteins. We did an article with Don because Don is a very progressive commercial producer, and yet he's very aggressive about producing seed stock genetics for his marketplace, the 10,000, 20,000 head milking herds. And Don shared with us the criteria he uses for the sires of sons in the U.S. So 60 pounds of protein or more, 5 for productive life, 1 for daughter pregnancy rate, 2.9 for somatic cell, and 8 or lower for cavities. And in that list comes up 300 bulls that you can use. And Don challenged me on this and said, look, I do not put a single type requirement on the sires I select, but look at the average of the type on the bulls I use. They are above 2 points, and he doesn't even look at type, but he does use a higher type bull because he looks at the bulls that have the high type that actually last. So it was really interesting, that article that we did with Don. Whatever your criteria are, you're going to come up with a large list typically. And then it comes down to you really need to shortlist your bulls. And we do a lot of mating recommendations on the site. A couple of ones we wrote, 16 bulls you should be looking at, and the 25 poly bulls. It's certainly an avenue that's getting very popular due to consumer demand as it grows. When we say you need to look at genetic diversity, we also look that you got to make sure that you have an outcross sire because of the effects of inbreeding. And when we do that, we actually look to segment those large lists down into some micro lists and shortlist them. We usually say, well, I want 4 or 5 bulls in each one of these categories. One that's an overall balanced bull that has production, health, durability. One that's a production bull. One that's a longevity bull, and one that's a high health. So we can sort 4 those categories. And why do I say you need to have 4 of that, or why do I segment them down? Well, that really gets down to the corrective mating. We have a heifer here that was actually bred by my father. That once you have your short list, we kind of say, well, this heifer, if you look at her, I don't know how well you can see the slides here, but she's a fairly high index. She's about 3,000, just under 3,000. She's actually over 3,000 EGB LPI heifer, so on the upper end. But she's got some pretty significant flaws. She's only about 1,200 for milk. She has strong components. She needs some udder improvement, and she can use health and fertility, especially within a body condition, though I don't get as worried about that, improvement. So when we shortlist and we have those sires who are good in specific reasons, it's quick to easy to say that I need a bull that's a production bull that has good udders from my shortlist on her. And then obviously just check for inbreeding after that. One of the questions I get a lot of the time from a lot of breeders is, well, how do I know what is an improvement for a specific trait or what bulls are higher? So we kind of put this out, we use it now and then on different articles that we write, but it kind of shows you that for fat yield, it really doesn't make a difference in US to Canada. It's about 10 to 20 kilos a pound, and it's about an average bull. If you want to see improvement, you need to be able to go to 35. And if you really want to see improvement in it, you need to be 60 kilos or pounds or higher. The protein percentage is there as well. US type, Canadian type is about a 1 point US is about 5 for confirmation in Canada. So that's similar weighting. Here we have a 1.5. There have been adjustments to that. And then we have fertility, somatic cell is uniform across both countries. And then what's Canadian in the 2 countries. One of the very interesting discussions we get a lot of the times from breeders is the merits of genomic sires. We put this out from time to time, kind of knocking on genomics and then we educate why. But a lot of the people who are anti-genomics kind of tell you, I don't know the pedigree behind the bull. Really, it's some cow that didn't last or didn't do much. So we've got an ugly classification score, but hey, they got numbers through the roof, and I don't want to use a sire like that. And in the beginning of running the bullpen, I used to spend hours debating this with people. Now we spend hours just writing the articles and educating about it. The first thing I tell people when they talk about genomics is you need to remember that genomics is a tool. A lot of the time people confuse the word or exchange the word, and I'm guilty of it, exchanging high genomic with the word high index. Genomics is not an index. Genomics is a tool that increases the reliability of type traits and indexes, but it is not an index in its own right. So I kind of remind people that it's the index versus pedigree versus type debate, not the genomics versus pedigree versus type debate. The other thing, and this is from Brian Grant from CDN again, is it took all the bulls that were tested as genomic sires and looked at them once they received their production proofs, genotype proofs. And they said, well, what level of certainty can we be sure that those genomic bulls, those high index genomic bulls, are going to end up where they belong, because everyone talks about how much they drop. Well, Brian did the number crunching and showed that you can do with 95% confidence that those bulls will end up with at least 670 points within their initial index. And you say, well, that's a significant drop. And it is a significant drop, I get that. But if you look at the current number one GLPI bull in Canada that is seen and available, which is Silver Ridge V Extreme, who currently sits at 3,544 GLPI, and you weigh him down, you can be guaranteed that 95% confidence he will at least be a 3,190 bull. Doesn't mean you'll be guaranteed that, but 95% of the time he will, but he could also be higher. So this is a pretty safe bet that he's going to at least be 3,190 points. If you compare him to the top proven bulls in Canada right now, he nudges in just behind Omega, who's at 32.47 and ahead of the number 2 bull, Ultra Razor. So if you say, yeah, he's maybe not a 35.44 bull, but he's certainly a very strong, viable option right in those top 2 or 3 bulls that a lot of people need to consider. I think a lot of breeders are getting that message because for the first time last year, genomic young sire semen outsold proven sire semen in Canada. 51% of the semen sales in Canada last year were by a sire who is currently in the success phase. I'm trying to equate that to what it really means. I like to play golf, and Gary, your friends who are golfers too. Genomics will get you within 20 feet of the hole 95% of the time. It's not going to give you a hole in one every time. There's no guarantees in this world. But 95% of the time, he's going to get you that short putt. He's going to get you close enough that it is worth using that tool. And that's the big thing we need to think about when you're thinking about genomics and whether to use them or not is understand that it's got a range. It's a range from being very close. As time has gone on, there's been a lot of testimonials that have done quite well for it. One of the first flagship sires for the genomic era was DSU Observer. There's been a lot of DSU bulls sampled in the genomic era. Observer was heavily used as a sire of sons, while he himself was still just a test sire. When Observer came out, he came out number 1 in the US. And that gave very significant validation to the genomic process. But then something very interesting happened to Observer literally 2 profiles later, and he dropped. He went down to about number 15, 18 range. And a lot of people said, look, he dropped. But what you need to remember is he was used so heavily. He went from a high reliability test sire to a decent reliability first crop sire to a 99.9% reliable sire faster than any other bull in the history of the breed. The neat part about that is when you compare him to the 99.9% reliable bulls, he was number 2, just behind the number 1 bull. So he got very reliable, very fast, and he got there at a very high level. Still a validation for the whole process. Now, I always tell people you can find case-by-case studies and success stories and failures, but it's what happens across the whole breed really tells you if the program's working. CDN again puts out numbers showing the rate of genetic advancement in Canada over the past 12 years. 12 years, 12 years. And it shows that since the introduction of genomics, the rate of genetic gain has more than doubled. So, it's not just happening on the case-by-case scenario. The advancement of our breed has gone so fast and so rapid, mostly due to the fact that we're using sires and sons 2 or 3 years faster, which is connect that genetic turnover by 50%. being that my father is a geneticist and my brother works for Alta Genetics as our CEO, we are very advocates of genomic testing. This is me on your left and my brother on the right. When he got the bad news when the genomic test came back that he was the lesser of the two of us, but he's taking it well. He moved on with it and hasn't shown his face enough. Again, I go back to the supermodel, doctor, amazing mother scenario. I did get lucky. My wife is each one of those type of people. I had to put that in because when I put her picture in for the amazing mom, she wanted me to make sure I gave her full credit. And with that, just kind of a slide that we put it online a lot. Sometimes people misinterpret what I'm trying to say, so I do apologize for that. And if you have any questions, I would love to clarify it. And we are ready for questions at this point.